Hey everyone, welcome. Today we are doing chapter 3 of Unlearn Your Anxiety and Depression book club. As you can hear, I have kind of a raspy voice today, so we'll see how this goes. All right, so we are going to talk about uh, chapter 3, which is how does anxiety or depression occur? So feel free, of course, to put things in the chat as we go. If you have any comments or questions. And then I'm going to share my screen and we'll go over the slides that I have. Look at it here. Okay, so how does anxiety and or depression occur? As you remember from what we've talked about, kind of a review, there are these learned neural circuits, like neural pathways in the brain that are created in a similar way that result in chronic pain. So anxiety, depression, chronic pain, same neural circuits, same type of development. Usually we would see acute anxiety if there was a stressful event, like if you were being threatened by a bully or lost in a forest, that would be an event that would cause anxiety in that moment. But chronic anxiety is caused by neural circuits that have been learned and ingrained after a series of stressful events. Same with depression. Acute symptoms of depression could be caused by a temporary situation, such as a loss or other occurrence that causes sadness. But repeated stressful events can cause chronic depression, which is also caused by learned neural circuits that have become ingrained over time. So this is just the same as with pain, right? Acute pain can happen because of damage, but then chronic pain, most often, are these learned neural circuits of danger. So the learned neural pathways of anxiety, let's think back to childhood. You might have gone through some of this with Unlearn Your Pain, but as we get into the sections later, we'll go into a lot of depth about your childhood and how you related to your siblings, or if you had siblings, or if you moved, or if your dad treated you a certain way or not, right? So if you think about your child experiences, they have a profound effect on how we respond to the lives or the events in our lives now. So, and then you think of how our brain works. Hebb's law is that the brain cells that wire or fire together, wire together. This is neuroplasticity. So basically these neural circuits become learned and easy and fast, and they react more frequently when we practice them. So if you think of cumulative stress, children who are raised in environments that are harsh become wired to respond to new situations with distrust and fear. This is just an automatic fight or flight response. In The Way Out, I think he uses an example of like a puppy that's been abused. I hate that example, but we've probably all seen some kind of animal that was mistreated, and then in the future they are just so fearful, right? So just thinking of this as just kind of how our brain physiology works to keep us safe. The fight or flight reactions, if our body goes into these states, excuse me, to try to protect us, they have physical reactions in the body as well as mental and emotional responses, right? Because we want to prepare our muscles to run or to fight, and it increases our heart rate, right? So all these things are affected by the fight and flight response. The more someone is exposed to occurrences of fear, the more the neural circuits learned from this fear to become sensitized. And they can become generalized, right? So it's not just one certain person that you're afraid of. You're afraid of all men or all people with loud voices or all dogs. So we know that anxiety is not the only outlet for this powerful alarm system in the brain. It's equally likely that someone with a stressful childhood, coupled with threatening situations later in life, could develop a painful condition like a headache or migraine, back or neck pain, abdominal pain, or IBS. Or you could have multiple symptoms. So you could have one or more of those, other body pains, and anxiety or depression. So they're it's the more of those you have, the more likely it's neural circuit. So then the brain and depression, danger, you can respond with that fight or flight, which is more like an activation. There's cortisol, or you could have the freeze and the submit response. So I think he's using submit like I would use fawn, freeze or fawn. Okay. And basically, those are like if you've had extreme fight or flight, or it's like hopeless feeling and you feel like things will never change, you can go into freeze or submit. And then that would feel like fatigue in the body, the clinical symptoms of depression. So these are nervous system states, if you think about it, right? Anxiety and depression. Okay, I'm just going to read all of this because he goes through a few case study examples here. And I just really think it's so helpful when people summarize what they learned. And so listen, if you're applying this to yourself, listen for any of these things that could be areas that you might want to work on or clean up or improve a little for your own sake. So Gail, what she learned overall was to express her deeply held emotions concerning her parents, the move, she moved, her husband, and her bosses. She learned to recognize self-critical thoughts and to appreciate herself and what she has accomplished. So that was a big one for me, like recognizing how critical I was of myself. She's practicing mindfulness, exercising, engaging in yoga, and eating better. She's found a job she likes that challenges her and in which she's appreciated. Her children are doing well, and she's been able to forgive her ex-husband and develop a civil relationship with him. Gail has noticed she reverts to depressed feelings at times, but because she understands how these feelings were learned, she looks for why they might have rearisen, and she's more able to release them and get back to enjoying her life. Right? So think about if any of those things could apply to you, expressing your emotions, challenging yourself more with a job instead of being inactive, maybe, right? So all of these kinds of things, as we'll talk about more, can really have a connection to our personality traits and the way we're treating ourselves. Okay, so unraveling anxiety and depression, you'll want to carefully review your life story. And there can be three main components that create these conditions: the priming events, the triggering events, which we'll talk about what those are, and the personality traits, specific personality traits. Okay, so the priming events, some people are more likely to be sensitive to stress and more likely to be responsive to other people's needs. And when we're born, we are dependent on a tremendous amount of caring to meet our needs as infants. So some people are just born more sensitive. We know that. And then we also need so much as infants and children that if those needs are not met in certain ways, we might have those fight, flight, freeze reactions. So children who have the unfortunate situation of having experienced parental divorce, hunger, death in the family, sickness or disability, powerful sibling rivalries, emotional, physical, or sexual abuse, or any other negative events are primed to expect negative experiences in their lives. Can you guys resonate with any of those? I know a lot of people who have come to this work, they don't really have particularly traumatic childhoods. I would consider myself in that category. If you look at my ACEs score, it's very low, but we could also have some of those personality traits by being highly sensitive and by the ways we're reacting to the environment with stress. For me, I've told this before, but I was just raised in an environment that was very religious. And so I developed this fear that, I wasn't being good enough and I wasn't doing enough. And so my nervous system was primed just kind of over time by little fears to expect negative experiences or to feel not enough. So, don't think, well, why is this happening to me? Because I didn't have any really big T traumas. Try and look for what There could be. It could be even moving, being bullied in school, things like that. So our brains will learn to react with fear, especially the more of those situations that were fearful that we had. And that's the fight, fight, freeze, or submit. And the circuits are usually, at first, at least, quite specific to the emotional hurts. So listen for these too. Loss or abandonment. Do you resonate with being controlled emotionally, being physically or sexually attacked, or other such specific situations? For some people, they might have had anxiety, stomach aches, headaches in childhood. I know I definitely had stomach aches. I had a lot of sore throats. Later, I had an eating disorder, which is also another symptom of mind body or neural circuit stuff. So most people don't actually develop the manifestations of anxiety, depression, or pain until later in life. So sometimes people are like, why was I fine until I was 30? That's just kind of how this happens. It's normal. I'll show you a little graph kind of table about it later, but, or a picture anyway. So a slide, I was like trying to think of the right word. Anyway, I'll show that to you later. That kind of shows how even in childhood, if you didn't display a lot of those symptoms, a smaller trigger will result in larger symptoms later. Okay. So there are these triggering events. So there was the priming. So that's just kind of like setting up your brain for a lot of fear. And then there's a trigger. The triggering events are life circumstances that activate the neural circuits by priming events. So these events are often eerily similar to the priming event. So it could activate the specific established fear and danger circuits in the brain that were created by the priming event, producing powerful reactions in the body that produce anxiety or depression or pain, insomnia, fatigue, or all of those other symptoms that we talk about with pain and all of those. So individuals who've had many priming events in their lives often become susceptible to non-specific triggering events, especially when it's emotionally charged. So for example, a victim of a car accident is more likely to develop chronic symptoms if the person who hit them has no remorse and just walks away without so much as an apology, right? So maybe no, they didn't have a car accident before, but their brain was already primed for fear. And then the trigger was the car accident, and it was especially triggering because the person who hit them wasn't sorry. And so that is how the emotions can play part of it. Another example is surgery is more likely to be interpreted as an assault by the subconscious mind if the doctors are uncaring or harsh. I've for sure seen both of those examples with people in physical therapy. One man was injured at his job and, just never really got the validation that it was the job's fault and that hole shouldn't have been there that he fell in. And years later, his shoulder was still hurting him after years of physical therapy. And definitely people have told me about how, they had a surgery they wish they never had, or the doctor wasn't helpful. And this can perpetuate pain or symptoms. And then we're just going to talk about how women are more likely than men to have anxiety and depression, as well as migraines, IBS, fibromyalgia. Even Gabor Mate will say more women are more likely to have autoimmune disorders. 80% of autoimmune sufferers are women. And he cites the same reasons. And these are the socialized reasons. Women are more likely to be socialized to be deferential. So to, defer to someone else, to take care of the needs of others before attending to their own needs. They're also more likely to be victims of abuse. Women are more often in employment positions that are subservient. They are expected to be physically attractive while managing most of the duties in the home. They're more likely to be in situations where they're caring for children or aging parents and or for grandparents. Those can be very stressful things. Women are more likely to be oriented toward wanting to please others and feel like they should do better or do more, and they're less likely to assert themselves. Men are more likely to be assertive and to blame others for the problems in their lives. That actually, in this case, often results in less pain, but men can have these symptoms too, of course, by having childhood experiences or being primed for fear. This is just generalized kind of social societal standards for women and men that are different. Women are more likely to be conscientious and agreeable and prone to worry. But this is actually different in traditional cultures. So a lot of this is seen in women in America and Europe, but not necessarily in other cultures where there aren't as many expectations or demands or the same kind of demands on women. But many men have endured childhood hurts and have had life stressors that have triggered anxiety or depression as responses. If you've had significant early life stressors, you're more likely to develop a variety of specific personality traits. So these are the personality traits we look for: perfectionism, low self-esteem, feeling excessive guilt, being overly responsible and or self-critical, and needing to be good or liked. So that was pretty much my personality when I started this work, my personality traits. And so actually this work, I'm kind of glad that I found this, and had that problem in the first place so that I found this work, because these personality traits are not healthy, even if you're not getting the physical pain or anxiety. People with these traits tend to hold emotions in and put extra pressure on themselves. These personality traits began early in life at times that child didn't feel completely safe or protected. And, thinking about this, like, I really like to think about, this helps me be compassionate for myself when I'm like, why did I develop this? Why is this going on? Why does my nervous system respond like this? It's like, this was in the works long before now. I had personality things that developed because of just nervous system reactions when, as a child, I didn't feel safe. And it doesn't mean that my parents weren't really good parents, but, a child crying, the parent can't always get there in time. Or, I heard some yelling, um, my parents yelling at my sibling, and that was really scary to me. And I didn't know how to express that to them, right? So even with normal childhoods, um, the way that Dr. Clark puts it is, think of your childhood and think if you would want your child to go through those same exact experiences. And if there's anything that you're like, ooh, I really wish it wasn't that way, those things could have been those stressors that caused these personality traits to develop, okay? And then people are talking about responsibility in the chat. My overly responsible resonated with me. My mother told me I was the responsible child all of the time. And Angela, I'm always the most responsible person in the room, right? And this sense of duty, responsibility, it's like this high guard. Like I just, I have to always be making sure everyone's good. And I have this duty, and it's stressful, right? These reactions developed as adaptations to those situations to help that child get their needs met. They learned, for example, that if they tried harder to be good or take care of another's needs, they'd be treated better and therefore feel better. I mean, you just think of how many times you hear a parent saying, like, you made me so mad. And then the kid is like, okay, I gotta behave differently so mom doesn't get mad, because they have no idea, they're not really, controlling their parents' emotions, and they could even hear their parents fighting and think that they need to be a better kid so their parents won't fight. So, these are just subconscious. This is developing as we grow. And hopefully that helps you, like it helped me, find a little bit of compassion for myself. So as an adult, these traits are often counterproductive and lead to increased stress, right? So usually as an adult, we're still behaving in those same ways as we did as children because we're not realizing that these are just adaptations that we tried to do to feel safe. And then, as we said, many individuals are born with genetic traits of being highly sensitive. Like just today, my client this morning was telling me she's reading a book about highly sensitive people, and it's like estimated 20% of people are just born more sensitive. And funnily enough, the rates of people with chronic pain in America, it's 1 in 4 or 5, which is about 20%. Oops. So kind of interesting. Personality and genetic traits both contribute to these activation of neural pathways. And I love this quote from Dr. Schubiner. He says it in Unlearn Your Pain as well. Each of our bodies is a barometer of what's going on in our environment and how we react to it. And as this is just repetition here, but the events in our early life condition us. And then when we experience stressful events that trigger the deep emotions of suppressed anger, guilt, fear, or sadness, our bodies will often warn us of the situation by producing anxiety, depression, pain, insomnia, fatigue, right? And this is not because people who manifest this in their bodies are weak or crazy or incompetent. It's because they're human. So if you find yourself judging yourself a lot about why you go into these nervous system states or have these neural circuits, please try to be more compassionate with yourself, because that's part of how we stay stuck in these pathways, right? Okay, so this is because of how we're constructed. The interaction between the mind and the body frequently causes powerful physical reactions to stressful events. Think of blushing, right? All this blood comes and warmth to your cheeks. This happens subconsciously. Our mind and body, our mind is producing physical things in our body all the time in reactions to stressful events, thoughts, and feelings. And it's mediated by the subconscious part of the brain. This is automatic, and we're not even aware of it. I think there's so many people that are like, I don't feel that stressed. I wasn't thinking about that. I don't know why, I don't feel anything. It's subconscious. It's below your conscious awareness. Oh, yeah. And Yoshin says, I believe Gabor Mate says you can be born highly sensitive because of the environment where your mother was during pregnancy, or the stress she's been in, right? Yeah. Like we know that epigenetic stress is definitely a thing. And sometimes people are like, well, my mom, she had a bunch of trauma and she never had any physical symptoms, but maybe, then they're like, well, why did I? Probably because the egg that you were in was developing in her body as she was going through all that trauma. And so epigenetically, your genes are different because of that. Yeah, good point, Yoshin. And I also want to point out that being highly sensitive is not a curse. Some people are like, well, this sucks. I'm empathic. I'm highly sensitive. I just have to like live this less than life and be careful all the time. No, we can rewire this danger signal to not go off so much and use our sensitivity as it is supposed to be used, not to find everything dangerous, but to be sensitive to, when there is something or not. But being sensitive can be a gift and it can be your superpower, but it's like having a hearing aid. A hearing aid can be super helpful, but if it's turned all the way up, then even the wind triggers the hearing aid and any little sound triggers the hearing aid, right? So we want to just have it set right, and our sensitivity can be a really good thing. And oh yeah, Mary, oh wait, let's see. Sorry, I think there was a comment I missed. I'm going back because I thought I might have missed one. Because I do remember looking at it and then I was like, I'll go back to that. So thanks for keeping me on track if there was something I missed. Um, are these traits more common in the firstborn child who may be more responsible? I mean, I think generally I have heard that about firstborn children. I've never heard if that's been studied with relation to pain or symptoms, but that would be a good theory, I bet. Um, and then I'm glad to learn I can use my sensitivity as a superpower. Here's to getting it in check. Yeah, exactly. Like we all have different gifts. And a lot of people are like, oh, I'm just an empathic person, so I'm just going to take on everyone's emotions. So just look out for stories like that you might have of yourself, because our brains are neuroplastic. They're always changing. So it's like getting updates for your iPhone apps, right? You're like, every once in a while, you got to get the updates and fix the bugs so that brain can be the most powerful for you. Okay, so back to the subconscious versus conscious. Our conscious mind is, they say, about around 5% of our thoughts. So again, we might not be aware of what's going on because 95% or so of our thoughts are subconscious. The majority of our brain's functioning occurs at a subconscious level. And our senses, if you think about our brain, this organ up in our skull, taking in millions of bits of information from the environment, sights, sounds, sensations, also millions of inputs to our brain from our bodies as we constantly monitor our heart rate, respiratory rate, temperature, balance, and the functioning of all of our organs, such as the intestines and bladder, muscles, and joints, right? So our brain is just getting bombarded with tons of information. And we're consciously aware of what's going on around us while we walk, drive, work, and play. And we're also aware of many of our thoughts and feelings, which provide additional input to our brains. But we're not consciously aware of the majority of our thoughts and feelings because they're being generated by our subconscious. Our brains are designed to protect us. That's why we have these strong danger signals. And I call it like our primitive brain because they don't always make sense, but it's like survival in a primitive way. Subconscious is constantly reviewing all of the incoming data to determine if there's anything dangerous in our environment, including any dangerous thoughts or feelings. And this is happening in milliseconds, right? Like one time, I just thought of this example. I remember my hip was kind of doing some funky stuff. And I saw this lady stretching, and my hip started hurting when I saw her stretching her hip, right? So this is like, I just saw it. And then my brain was like, oh, danger, protect, right? And the brain responds to emotional dangers in exactly the same way that it responds to physical dangers. So the fight or flight response can be activated by a controlling boss, an argumentative sibling, a son who gets arrested for underage drinking, a parent who is demanding or critical, even if we're not consciously aware that those situations are affecting us. Oh, I just thought of one other little example that happened once. I was driving in the car with my dad, and he was talking about Thanksgiving coming up, and we were just talking about like inviting the siblings and when Thanksgiving was and kind of these plans. And my neck started hurting, like my neck and shoulders. And it was just so apparent because right when that conversation started and we were talking about planning, I love my siblings. There was no problems with that, but there was something that happened that activated this little danger signal. So I got that chance to just remind my brain that I was safe, to rewire that neural circuit, to give a different response. Like, oh, it's okay. I don't need to stress out about Thanksgiving like I saw my mom stressing, because I'm probably just going to make one thing or buy a pie or something. I'm not going to be all stressed out. Mary says, when you read Demanding Parent, I felt my breath change, activated. Yeah. Those little signals, those are your clues that something hit your stuff. That's how Eckhart Tolle says it. Something, we don't even know maybe what it was or why, but it hit our stuff, and that's our sign to get a little curious and to have compassion for ourselves. Yeah. Thanks for that, Mary. Good observation. Okay, so brains have a mechanism to deal with a physical injury. If you get injured, it puts you into a forced rest and recovery state, right? The pain makes it so you can't walk on that foot, or you get a fever to fight off the infection, and it puts you into the state of recovery. You have to rest. And the pains have the capacity to cause powerful symptoms of fatigue, pain, depression, and anxiety as a response to the danger signal, right? We know that. But then when we feel threatened on a subconscious basis by danger in our lives, it's easy to fall into a chronic state that can be very difficult to overcome. And our subconscious controls not only responses to our environment, but also what we perceive. This is crazy. Like, this is, our subconscious is actually determining what we see from reality, what we pick up in the environment. So we're perceiving differently, not just reacting differently to what's there. We will see only what our brains expect us to see. This is known as predictive coding. We want to think that our brains are just really objective and the information getting to our brain is just reality. But we could literally, I've used this example before, I've read an email wrong when I was in an activated state. My brain literally read the words differently. It skipped a line because of my state. There's that phrase, story follows state. Your nervous system state, it determines the story your brain comes up with, the thoughts you have. What we perceive is predicted from past experiences. And then the brain creates the sensations it expects us to feel. When the brain's in an ongoing state of warning or danger, it will continue to produce pain with movement, fatigue with activity, disordered thought processes, and many other sensations designed to enforce rest and inactivity. So that cumulative stress, that ongoing sense of danger produces more of these symptoms. Then the more the accompanying neural circuits are activated, the more they become normalized as default circuits. So I may start with, some pain just when I'm bending over, but because of my emotional state, even after the injury has healed, I keep having that pain with bending over, and then I have pain with sitting, and I have pain up and down my back, and I have pain with walking, and right. So it becomes more generalized and more prevalent. Okay, this is, bear with me, this picture isn't the best. This is actually from Dr. Schubiner's training that I did, and I just took a screenshot of it, so it's not the best picture, but I really wanted to include it because I like how it shows you in a picture format. This is the beginning of your life, and then this is as you age, going down, right? So as a child, you might have a big stressor hurt, relatively, right? You moved, someone bullied you, there was ongoing emotional abuse. So the stressor hurt was big, and the danger signal starts to form then, but it's not huge. Later in life, you might have a smaller stressor hurt, a trigger that's smaller, it's different, but then the danger signal is bigger and it starts to produce one symptom or a little symptom, right? And then later, you might have another stressor hurt. It might be big, it might be small, but the danger signal is getting bigger and the symptoms are getting more intense. And then later in life, you might just have a tiny little thing. Dr. Schubiner says it could be from running late or not finding a parking place or being worried about a child. That stressor hurt might be smaller, but because of how this wires and fires together, the danger signal is bigger now. It's more responsive. And then the symptoms are even bigger, right? So I love that picture just to kind of show how things get a little more intense, even with smaller triggers. So hopefully that helps you by seeing that as well. So then Dr. Schubiner says for more information on predictive coding, interoception, which is like how we get information from our bodies to our brain, and how the brain constructs how we or what we feel, see How Emotions Are Made by Lisa Feldman Barrett. That's a book in 2017. Okay. Simply having thoughts about our life stressors is often enough to trigger these physical reactions, right? So just like Mary just said, even hearing me say those words, a demanding parent, was enough to trigger a little physical response, even when we're not consciously aware of thinking about them. Oh, Angela says that helped explain the disproportionate reaction and symptoms. Yeah. And it's again, it's like, it's not because something's wrong with you. It's not because you're weak. Like that kind of thinking is just cruel. It's because this is how our nervous systems work. The more we befriend it and we are compassionate with it, the easier it will change. Okay. So, okay. This is a crazy experiment. They were able to get people to respond either using the left or the right side of the brain. And this one research participant was asked about the bullying he endured as a child. When he used his left brain, he said that the bullying occurred a long time ago and it didn't really bother him much anymore. That's how a lot of people talk about things in the past, right? If you just ask their logical side of their brain, they're like, that happened so long ago. I'm over it. I don't even really think about it anymore. However, the right brain responses indicated that it was still very much on his mind in a way as if the bullying was occurring in the present. So just be aware, some stuff could be going on in the subconscious that you don't know is going on. I actually had this once too. I'm not a huge journaler, necessarily like I have to do it every day, but times that I'm kind of confused about what's going on, or like there was this time that this feeling kept coming back. And what happened was like some people in my yoga friend group had a get together and I found out about it later and I wasn't invited. And I was like, oh, okay, it was an oversight. I get that, they probably didn't think of me because of this or that. My logical brain understood that, but I just kept feeling like yucky. And then I started writing about it and I wrote, I'm very, 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 very sad. And then I started writing about stuff from junior high. And right. So it's like crazy how this can be going on in our brains. We don't even know, but the symptoms of our body help us know. Just like Mary was like, oh, I caught my breath. What was that? Oh, it's because I just had this trigger. Your emotional memory is timeless. So things may feel like they may feel like they're happening now, even though it was a response that happened as a child that you're remembering. So this is particularly true at times of stress when these subconscious emotional reactions can trigger powerful responses. So especially if you're more stressed, then you're more likely to go into that childhood response. And humans are uniquely able to anticipate or worry about events that might happen in the future, right? Like my dog is not thinking about what's going to happen next month. He's in the present. But humans with our conscious brains, our big brains, can think about and worry about things that haven't even happened yet and get stressed about them, like worrying if we might lose a job or illness or marital infidelities, delinquent children, and death. These thoughts and emotions are normal. Everyone has worrisome thoughts and feelings. These occur on a regular and oftentimes frequent basis. So again, just trying to reinforce you're normal, nothing's wrong with you. However, we can train ourselves to be more resilient and to learn new skills to respond to what life brings us and to be less negatively affected by the thoughts and feelings those events generate. So we're not going to really change what happened in our past. We could never change that. We can't really change a lot of the stressful situations in life, but we can use these tools, be more resilient, and look at things differently so that we're not going right into those fight and flight responses as much. Okay. How are we doing? Let's check in, see if there are any questions, comments, insights. Some of you have been putting stuff in the chat. I appreciate that. But if you want to raise your virtual hand or unmute, we still have some time. Everyone just good and got all that information. Have any of you, oh, there's some messages. I'll save my question in case we need it. Oh, it's not showing me. Oh, okay. Sorry, this chat was being weird. I couldn't see it very easily. So it seems like a lot of work to go and change. Sorry, I lost the chat again. Go change personality. It seems like a lot to change personality characteristics. Yeah, yeah. And it's a lot to keep them the same too. It's like a lot to um, keep being a people pleaser and keep being hard on yourself, right? But I mean, this is the silver lining is that this work, not only will it help with your symptoms, but you'll actually be able to change those personality traits. So you behave differently, think differently. And just like in that case study, like the lady with depression, she still had some depression every once in a while, but she was able to understand as soon as it started what was going on and change it, right? I notice when I have bad anxiety, I have zero pain. Yeah, Laura, I've seen that a lot with people. It's great when that happens, but feeling anxious is no fun either. Yeah, definitely. And in Unlearn Your Pain, Dr. Schubiner, when he's talking about the extinction bursts, he said that can be so uncomfortable when people like they're used to a certain amount of back pain, their back pain goes away or decreases, but then they have anxiety and they're like, I just want my back pain back because then at least I knew what to expect. And so this is really, really normal, especially with this process that you're doing and how symptoms will kind of pop up here and there and go down and come up. So that's really normal. And again, our body is a barometer for what's going on in the environment and how we're reacting to it. So that can be our little breadcrumb trail or our clues of like, okay, now how can I fine tune, what's going on in my brain? And the good thing is, as we know, treating anxiety is going to be just the same way that you got rid of that pain that you had too. Um, but yeah, and having bad anxiety and zero pain, really good news that your pain is neuroplastic. But yeah, just the feeling anxious is no fun either, for sure. And part of how we get our brain to stop producing it so much is to just kind of get used to, okay, this is how I feel when I'm anxious. Just like we do with pain, the somatic tracking. Okay, there's a tightness. Oh, there's a fast heart rate. And just kind of instead of being like, oh my gosh, it's so bad that I have these symptoms, we want to try to get more at the end of the spectrum of, oh, there's a symptom. It's just like there's clouds in the sky, they're passing through. But I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying that's the goal. And then Renee says, I experienced this, right? I remember coaching you through that actually, that, it was like, I wish I had my other pain back because this anxiety really sucks. So be patient with yourself. Mary says, this made me think of high school. I went out for volleyball and the gym teacher made me stand by the net. Thus, I couldn't really play. I was really bad at it. She was right, but it was embarrassing to be singled out. Whenever there's a game like that at a party now, I'm so afraid to play and embarrass myself. Such a shame, right? And so, yeah, just knowing that this is your chance to, retrain your nervous system, to rewire that, to teach it with love that this playing the game is just for fun. It doesn't matter what other people think. It's, that kind of stuff, right? it is a shame. And, it is something that we can understand and be compassionate with ourselves and even change to some degree, right? It's not to say you'd never have that reaction with a game in the future, but at least when you do, you can be compassionate with yourself so that then you can actually choose if you want to play or not, rather than just reacting. Any suggestions to help improve developing awareness of when in fight or flight? Yeah, I often find I don't notice being activated until the anxiety is really amplified or the muscle tension builds. Would like to be closer to identify sooner. Yeah. Sherry, do you have a second to get on and unmute?
I
Oh,
do.
hi. All right. Well, I thought maybe I would just talk to you about it and you can answer some questions. And then anyone who has this same question, do this for yourself too. Your symptoms of anxiety may be a little different, but notice how your body specifically responds to things. So, Sherry, developing that awareness of the fight or flight or freeze, he says fight or flight, but I think he means any of them. So what would you say are some of the symptoms that you first start to notice?
Shallow breathing,
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
um, uh, tightness in the chest, and occasional um, muscle tension. But it's the muscle tension that I often just don't feel
Mm-hmm.
until it's really um, pretty extensive.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to be able to nip it in the bud. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I can catch the shallow breathing,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes it's so unconscious
Yeah. Yeah.
that sometimes I don't even notice it until
Yeah.
unless I take a break
Yeah. Yeah.
and practice some breathing.
Yeah. Well, I think you're on the right track with noticing the variety of symptoms. So muscle
Mhm.
tension is definitely one, but yeah, the shallow breathing might be your first clue. Or a lot of times people have like a rapid heart rate, or they feel kind of like that butterfly feeling, or they feel that surge of adrenaline or cortisol. So you might even be able to kind of close your eyes and think of something that makes you anxious and just feel for yourself and your body what does happen. Um,
Mhm.
the other thing I would suggest is just kind of getting familiar with what kind of triggers you have. Again, from that place
Mhm.
of observing, curiosity, not like, oh, I've got to have a perfectly clean house or I might get triggered and having it. No, we're just like, I'm just going to notice, oh, every time I see those dishes in the sink, it kind of makes me anxious because, my mom used to yell at me for that or something, right? So kind of starting to use that brain to kind of see those patterns of triggers. Oh, it's more when I go out, or it's more when I'm alone, or it's more, and that can help too. But getting sensitive to like how the body is feeling and just kind of checking in on that is really how I've found that's really helpful. The other thing is you might notice the kind of thought patterns you have in those states. So
Mhm.
anxiety is usually thought patterns like, I'm not doing enough, or I need to do more, or there's so much to do, or what if this happens, or right. So kind of identifying for me, freeze type of thoughts are more like, I'm not good at this, it's hopeless, I'm back to square one. This is never going to change. So I've even started to notice just by my thought patterns that I'm dysregulated, even if I don't
Mhm.
really notice it in my body.
Mhm.
Because I
Yeah.
feel like,
One thought
oh, go ahead.
I was Thank you. One thought that I might do is just schedule some late afternoon meditation or
Uh,
writing and then meditation because I just don't notice the stress building throughout the course of the day.
mhm.
And um, so that was an
Yeah.
idea that I thought might
Yeah.
help me move forward and release some of that stress.
Yeah. And maybe just questioning that story of like the stress is building throughout the day. Maybe that's true. I'm not saying I know,
Mhm.
but also maybe there is a trigger that happens later. And if we
Mhm.
don't notice it, maybe it's not really happening until we notice it. And then instead of thinking of the muscle tension as like, oh, if I get to that point, I've done it wrong. I should have noticed it before. Just being like, okay, here's that neural circuit that turned on of some muscle tension. What am I thinking right now? How can I create less stress about this situation and telling my body I'm safe? Because, muscle tension, you could catch that pretty early and turn those neural circuits back off. And then by that, train your brain not to produce the muscle tension as much.
Mm. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So just kind of be aware of like, maybe if the anxiety is usually later in the day, what else is going on later in the day? If your mornings are pretty peaceful and they're good, maybe not create a problem where there isn't one, but just kind of see. Anyway, sometimes it's just good to kind of realize we have some stories and some patterns and question them. I'm not saying it hasn't been building all day, but it's possible that kind of thought of like, it's been so long since I meditated, I'm going to have anxiety, but definitely working things into the day is a great strategy too. So
Mm.
I would probably do both. Do that and be aware.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a couple more questions. I think it's tricky to figure out how to not feel like a victim when we are reviewing our past. I want to extend self-compassion to myself, but not live like a victim also. Yeah, definitely some of the exercises later, there's things like writing a letter that you're never going to send or processing anger, because definitely a lot of victimized feelings, there's some repressed anger, like, it's not appropriate to have anger at my parents because they're my parents, or whatever we were trained about anger. It's not appropriate. Good girls aren't angry or whatever. So be gentle with yourself, right? If you find yourself feeling like a victim, just being like, oh, okay, this makes sense because I have a lot of neural pathways of that. And the thing that happened, I did feel like a victim. And going forward, how can I feel more powerful? How can I remind myself that that's not happening now? But yeah, we will go through more of that. And thanks for sharing that, Jennifer. And then, yeah, meditation can help you learn to pause before reacting. Yeah, all these things, even with pain and all of this stuff, instead of catastrophizing, we're going to come to the present moment. And that's what we learn with, unlearning anxiety, depression. And that's what meditation and somatic tracking teach us, right? Coming to the present moment. All right. And yes, Mary, I saw that direct message. Um, all right. Any other questions, comments? It's been so good. Oh, yeah. I see a hand, Chris.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how to get the information.
Yeah.
So,
That you had the question about the visual impairment one, right?
yeah. So
I
is
will,
is
I do have um, like I go to this like meeting thing with Dr. Schubiner and how every month, and that's this week. So I can for sure, I know I'm sorry, I told you I would ask last week, but I will for sure look into what other things besides the book club where it's less reliant on reading things, but you can just listen to it.
yeah. Yeah, because this was really enlightening and I appreciate it.
Oh, good. Oh, PJ has a good
Mhm.
suggestion. Do you use software that can read out loud written text? Never heard of that,
I-
Chris?
Well, I use it on my phone, but it won't read PDFs and
Mm,
it won't read
Kindle.
certain formats.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And then Mary says Reign of Pain is really good, great from Coursera. So Reign of Pain is Dr. Schubiner's free training. And again, that would be in more the video and audio format. So Reign of Pain. And yeah, Mary says her biggest thing is learning not to ruminate. I know, right? It's just this habit, and it can seem so productive, right? It's like, oh, if I just think of all the things, then I'll feel safe. But the the first step is just noticing when that's happening. And Mary, you might even feel what feeling or what ruminating feels like in your body. And then that's a better guide, right? If I know that, my stomach always tenses up when I ruminate, then I might notice that stomach tension before I notice that I'm ruminating. Okay, good stuff. Well, I did want to remind ya, just in our last couple minutes, I am offering this package with some coaching if you want a little extra support. It's definitely, just like an addition, like doing exercises on YouTube versus having a trainer. So there's in this offer 3 months of my group program, Alignment Academy, which has 2 calls per week, and the private podcast with call replays and a Facebook group. And that's for 3 months. And then 3 individual sessions with me, all for less than $300, $297. So a few people have taken me up on that offer. And so I just wanted to remind you that that's there. And if you're getting the emails, there'll be links for that, or you can message me if you can't find that and you're interested. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. And we will see you next week for chapter 4. Okay, take care.